Meeting is being live streamed. All right. All right. Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to 1 Million Cups. We are the Atlanta South chapter. We meet here at Rome at Trilith, which is in the town of Trilith, which is across the street from Trilith Studios, which is, I think, the largest movie production studio in the world still. I think we hold that title. It's pretty awesome being here. Everywhere that we look outside the windows of this incredible room is you see construction. There's just growth happening all around us. It's a very exciting time to be here. And I'm really glad that you guys are all here to join us for this. 1 Million Cups is an organization that was started by the Kauffman Foundation. Ewing J. Kauffman was a really rich dude who left a lot of money in an endowment, and they have decided to spend that money by creating an organization like this. One of the ways they've spent that money is by creating an organization like this. And 1 Million Cups, their mission is to caffeinate entrepreneurs 1 cup of coffee at a time. Their rules are pretty simple. You have to apply to be a chapter, and then they provide us with really fun things like notebooks and pens. So if you're new, first timers, could you raise your hand for me? 3 people. Casey, if you wouldn't mind distributing a notebook, a pen, and a sticker to them, that would be awesome. They also provide us with a lot of tech support. So for instance, this screen you see that I'm going to ask all of you to make sure to take out your screens and check in, that reports back to them just how many people we have in the room. I don't know what they do with that data, but I hope that it goes towards some really great reporting. But it also gives us the ability to then send you an email to let you know what our presentation is going to be about next week. So I encourage you all to make sure to check in. Their rules are also that we have to allow our presentation to be 6 minutes long, followed by 20 minutes of Q&A, and then you rinse and repeat with a second presenter. But down here on the south side of Atlanta, we have a hard time booking presenters, so we typically stick to 1 per session, and I don't have a clock that runs. However, there is something magical about that 6-minute mark. You as an audience member will find yourself starting to drift a little bit after 6 minutes. So I encourage you to stay tuned. I've given Rod permission to go beyond his 6 minutes. He is prepared to do 6 more or less. So I said, take your time. We tend to go right up until 10 o'clock anyway, even with 1 presenter. So I'd like to give as much back to the presenter as possible. Before going on, I just want to make sure to thank our sponsors. I will first thank my company, Jason Hunter Design, because everybody who works for me is doing a phenomenal job of making sure that they communicate with presenters and do all the advertising. Then we've got a local print shop on campus here at Trilith. They produce all of the flyers that we hand out around town, which I know, I have to put in a new order. I gave out my last one a couple weeks ago already. Cody Media, who is a partner of Jason Hunter Design and not here this morning, he is who is paying for your coffee. I hope you take advantage. And I believe Hero Donuts has provided 24 donuts. Those are up there. Please, please, please help yourself, because whatever is left over has to come home to my kids, and they do not need the extra sugar. And then last but not least, Rome, which is the space where we sit. And I usually have a whole thing to say about it, but I'm going to let Marshall come and talk for himself.
Thanks, Jason. Hey guys, I know some of you were here last week. I always like to start with quick hands, show of hands of anyone who's a member here. So that's awesome, cool. So if you have questions and you're too shy to come and ask me, feel free to ask them. But anyway, I was going to give you a little brief overview of this space. So what Rome does and why we exist is we're doing inspired work. We have 3 basic things that we're doing. We're working, we're meeting, and we have office, right? And so working is going to be just generally co-working space. That's where a lot of the membership benefits come in. That's going to be at any of the locations we have. We have 7 here in Atlanta, 1 out in Dallas that we just opened up. And then offices, they are in low demand, but we do have, or high demand, but we do have them. And so if you want to get on the wait list for that, of course, you can talk with us. And then meetings. And so rooms like this, our 3rd floor, they host everything from scrappy entrepreneurs to Fortune 500 companies. And so we just want to be a place where people can get stuff done and do it in a way that's going to be, again, renewing and inspiring for them. One other thing I want to say is that something that our founder said one time is that the Ritz-Carlton, which is something that we, company that we look up to a lot in their hospitality, they said they're ladies and gentlemen serving ladies and gentlemen. And something that he said about us is that we're scrappy entrepreneurs serving scrappy entrepreneurs. And so I think that given this group, I think that's an awesome context. So anywho, we would love to be partners with you. And if you'd like to learn more about it, feel free to come down to the front desk. We'll give you a tour. I'm going to leave some of these. Actually, I'll see them on the table right here. There's little brochures talking about our different offerings. And again, if you have any more questions, we'd love to talk about that. Thank you.
Thanks, Marshall. All right. Cool. Well, with that, then I am going to, Rod, can you tell me if you can share your screen? Because I'd like to kick it over to you, and then I'll move you up to the big window. Yeah. All right, great. Hang on. I went full screen. Hitting all kinds of the wrong buttons here. Minimize and okay. Now you should be able to go full screen. There we go. All right, Rod, let's do a audio check.
Check 1, 2.
Oh boy. Hang on. One more setting to change. Marshall helped me with this last week. Let's see if I can figure it out today. Audio, speaker, garage. All right, one more test.
Check 1, 2.
How about a check 3, 4?
Check 3, 4, 5, 6.
I think, do you guys hear? It's definitely not on my computer anymore, but how about that? Try again.
Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes, much better. All right, I got it working. Yay.
Great, great. Well, I want to thank everyone for letting me join in. This is awesome. I grew up in Portland, Oregon, and lived in Utah for a long time, and live in Orlando, Florida now. And I've been coming to Million Cups for about 9 years now, and I just love it. So my name is Rod McKenzie. I'm with Story Changes Everything, and let me make sure. And there we go. So I'm going to tell you that this is my little bit longer version. Instead of a 6-minute, this will probably be 7 or 8 minutes. So how I got started telling stories. Back in the fall of '94, yes, I'm old. I had my last semester in college. I was studying computer science. I also was getting a business minor, and I had a psychology minor. My wife and I were expecting our second child. I had decided to start a business with my dad. And so I created a product. We created a business. I went and launched that at a convention in Hawaii. So I was in Hawaii for 2 days, and I got my feet wet in the ocean. Otherwise, I was incredibly busy. I went to I had 5 different interviews for jobs in my computer science, got 4 job offers, and I was very fortunate. I got hired during a deep hiring freeze at a tech company, and I passed all my classes, and the business that I started was telling people stories about products and companies. So what I did is I created a 4-page newspaper. I know this is back when newspapers were a thing. And I told people's stories with the products. We were in a niche where we told natural health stories. So people's testimonials with something that have to do with a supplement. And so we took an advantage of the DSHEA Act into where we were a third-party company. So we would talk about generic health ingredients. So instead of, ABC brand vitamin C, we would just say vitamin C. So we could say diabetes and cancer, and the companies couldn't. So we started a business doing that. I told about 20 different product testimonial stories, had interviewed some doctors, put them in there, and wrapped it all into a big story. Well, we started doing that. Business started a little slow. It took me 18 months to get out of corporate America. Haven't been back since July of 1996. Been doing my own thing since then. And to date, with everything that's gone on, I've sold about 90 million copies of those newspapers. I have clients that mail out about 100,000 to 200,000 pieces a month. Still to this day, I stopped the retail side of that business back in 2014, but I have clients that use this in direct mail still. They do it for all of their customer acquisition. Their target market is baby boomers. And so, those people still love to get things in their mailbox. And by the way, if you're not doing direct mail, it is a very uncompetitive market in direct mail. There's hardly anything that lands in somebody's mailboxes. And my client is profitable at a 0.7% return on his direct mail. And he's been doing this for 16 years. So it's still highly profitable with direct mail, even with postage costs and printing costs. So that's how I got started telling stories. I've told thousands of stories. And the reason I'm telling you that is that I wanted to show you that stories are everywhere. I just told you a story, right? My clients have had more than 100 million, my stories have helped my clients generate over $100 million in revenue. And I am a logical creative. So I've got a computer science mind, but yet I've been marketing for about 30 years, almost 30 years. So it's really kind of a different situation I am, because I have to put everything into formulas. And so let's talk about stories. We think in stories. We dream in stories. We talk in stories. We solve problems in stories. And stories are how our brains are wired to work. Actually, on Mythbusters, I don't know how many of you remember that show, but they did functional MRIs. And because the myth was we only use 10% of our brains. Well, they showed that with the functional MRI that we use about 15% of our brains when we're at rest. And the time that we use most of our brain is when we're telling or listening to stories. It's about 31%. That's what they show on the MRI. So also, come back here. The other thing is our brains, I'll get to this in a second. So why does everyone talk in facts and figures? Why do people still sell products instead of feelings and transformations? Those are the big questions I want you to ask yourself today. Because if you're selling facts and figures, or if you're selling products instead of transformations, that is one of the reasons why your business has not launched. Now, if you've got an e-com business, I have a client who does $100,000 a month in e-com advertising. They're a $20 million company, but they don't brand at all. They don't go out there and tell their story at all. They're just straight e-com. So now I'm helping the owner write a book, and they're going to utilize that within their business and also start to intensively brand their business with storytelling. So neurocoupling is really something that is incredibly scientific. This is how our brains work together. So the functional MRI that I was talking about, they actually have done a study where they had a storyteller and a listener, so a speaker and a listener. When the storyteller or the speaker told in a factual based story, and they had the listener listen, the brains did not fire at all. They could watch the images on the functional MRI, and their brains fired completely different. But when the speaker was telling a story, the brains fired, and the listener was listening, their brains fired alike. And stories get into the different parts of the brain where we have pleasure, empathy, and alertness. And these are all things, dopamine is incredibly powerful. So neurocoupling is where the speaker and the listeners, their brains fire very similarly. In sales, it's always been told, paint a picture. Facts tell, stories sell. These are things that have been passed down, but there is actual science behind it. So what does that have to do with your business? Well, the number one, so CB Insights, you'll see this picture on the screen. They're a top research firm, and they've done postmortems on hundreds of businesses. And so they'll talk to the CEO, the CFO, all the C-levels, the key people in the business, and they'll say, why did your business fail? And the reasons, they gave multiple reasons, but everybody kind of boiled down to ran out of cash as the top number one reason. But if you look at the second reason, there's no market need. So nobody wanted or needed their product. And I believe that is the reason that you ran out of cash or ran out of ability to raise new capital. They're not telling stories. All they're doing is saying, here's my product, go get it. Now, I have a big problem with having a business fail, because if a guy can take a rock, paint it, put googly eyes on it, put it in a Happy Meal box, and say, here, buy my pet rock. Now you won't be lonely at your cubicle, and sell $20 million worth of it. I think that we can safely say that you can make just about any business idea work. But there's a couple problems. People do not validate their business. They do not validate the story to tell about their business. And so what they're doing is they're going out there and sharing with their family and friends, and they get all this family and friends biased, and all of a sudden everybody says they have a great idea, they're telling a great story, and they flop. So there's a lot of problems about not having the right story. So you have lack of clarity with your business. You don't know what to say, not knowing if your business matters, poor lead gen, marketing, sales. These are all problems that having a lack of clarity in your business, not being able to tell your story clearly and concisely. These are all problems that are caused by it. So what I do is I help people generate a purpose-driven core story. It's your strategic narrative that drives everything: who, what, why you are, everything about your ideal client, how you're going to change the world. Now, if you do not have a story about how you're going to change the world, if all you're doing is solving a problem with someone at their desk, on their computer, you have a SaaS product, you have a health product, you have something that, and you're not figuring out how that's going to transform your ideal client and transform them throughout the, change the world for them, that's a poor story. So this is how you tell a story in a business. It's actually how you tell a story for the hero's journey. I don't know if you guys remember Joseph Campbell, but Joseph Campbell talked about the hero's journey in Greek mythology. So, but let's transform that into business. Your dream client is walking along everyday life. All of a sudden they have a problem that is a very severe escape from pain. Let's stop there for just a second. Aaron Ralston. I don't know how many of you guys remember the movie 127 Hours, but that movie talks about a hiker who was hiking in Moab, Utah, and had a boulder fall and trap his arm in between some rocks. And he was trapped for 127 hours. And he had to make a decision: die, literally die, or escape from that problem, from being trapped, by cutting his arm off with a pocket knife. Well, he chose to cut his arm off. So the challenge was, how does he really, that's not the challenge. The problem that he faced was so severe that he did anything to escape from it. Now imagine you are a greedy business, not a good business, but a greedy business, and you're sitting there holding a pocket knife and saying, listen, I'll sell you this pocket knife. How much would he have paid for that pocket knife? He would have paid everything he had, because it was life or death. Now, what we need to do is we need to understand our dream client or ideal client, the client that you want to work with. We need to understand their pit of despair so clearly. And the pit of despair is made up of their escape from pain, who caused that pain, who's the enemy, and what event caused them to experience that pain. Then they'll fall off, or the tipping point or the cliff, into the pit of despair. And they want to get to the promised land where all their problems are solved. That's your job as a business. You are not the hero. The business is not about you. Actually, nobody cares about your business at all until they need what you have to offer. And the only reason they're going to listen to what you have to offer is because it matches with their pain. So if you do not tell the story about how you match with your client's pit of despair, then why would they ever listen to you, right? So this is my story formula. I'll leave it up here for just a second. I'll move on and we can come back to it in Q&A if you want. But we figure out the identity of a company, and then we understand and transform our clients. And there's a bunch of steps here. What I've been able to do is, after telling thousands of stories, being very successful at it, learning what works, what doesn't work. Because I have a logical mind, I had to turn it into a formula. And so that's what I did. So the story formula is what I base all of my coaching and consulting on. I help my clients understand who they are, what their identity of their company is. We build a solid foundation. Each one of the boxes, the dream client, escape from pain, your big idea, promised land, business purpose, and intrinsic definition of success, those are all single sentence statements. So in other words, you've got 20 words to put those for each one of those, how you identify those. And that gives you an extremely clear picture of who your business is, what you are, why you are, how you help people, everything. And then everything else is about understanding and transforming your client, what their pit of despair is, what their transformation point is, and how you transform them with your solution. If you'll notice down here in the bottom row, the benefits of the benefits, that is the transformation of your client. That is what you sell 90% of the time. So we create stories. There's your overall strategic narrative drives everything. Pitch decks, videos, websites, social media posts, ads, videos, lead gen, ebooks, marketing, and just about everything else. It drives company culture. It drives everything that you do. I watched a video yesterday of a gentleman who had a legal firm, and they were doing great. They just got a $1.3 million deal and to work with some clients. And people were leaving in droves because nobody understood where they were going, what the purpose of the company was. And so it ended up that $1.3 million client ended up not working well with their company values. So he actually returned the check. It was their biggest deal they'd ever made. He returned the check because his company culture was more important than one client. But how did they know that? They had to define their story first, and then he started keeping his good people instead of having them leave. So our purpose is to help leaders experience a mind shift and become purpose-driven and strategy-focused through storytelling. So here's a slide about how to connect with me. And there's my digital business card. That's a QR code there. And I'd love to answer any questions that you have. I feel like I took a little bit longer than the 6 minutes. So what kind of questions would you like to ask?
It's great. Well, as you're probably well aware, 1 Million Cups does require me to ask our presenters one question at the end of their presentation. And that is, what can we as a community do for you?
I am aware. I'm just used to that coming after all the Q&A. You guys do it before the Q&A?
Yeah, we like to start the Q&A with that question.
Oh, okay. That's awesome. Well, what I do is I have two different offerings that I do as an entry into my ecosystem. I have an AI storytelling. AI has cut my process with my clients on my normal program, which used to take 8 to 12 weeks to carry a client through. Now it's down to 4 weeks. And what I've also done is I've created a method where I do a single interview and then I can help develop a story through AI. It's not as precise as when you get it from me, but it is a economical resource for people that want to just see what we can work through. And then I have my core story mastery, where we go through 4 sessions, typically 1 a week, but I can do it a little bit faster if you want. We create your strategic narrative. I teach you how to create stories for anyone, anytime, and anywhere. And we learn how to integrate and use AI doing that. And so those, if you know of someone that needs a story to be told, please refer them to me. I'm always working on lead gen, just like everybody else. I guess I'm kind of like the cobbler, to where, the cobbler's children have holy shoes, or the auto mechanic always has a car in his front yard that doesn't run. So I'm great at helping people. I'm working on helping myself. So those are the couple things that if you have someone, if you know someone, or I've offered a 20% discount through the Million Cups for either the core story mastery or the AI storytelling. Or just go ahead and have someone connect with me. On my digital business card, there's a place where you can schedule a call with me. And so you can go ahead and look that up and schedule a call. And I'd be happy to listen to your story and see what we could do to help you, or just give you some advice.
That's great. I know you just said that you are like the cobbler without shoes, right? I mean, that's a pretty common thing. I think we all tend to work on our businesses last. We want to service our clients first. It's taken me 20 years to reach out to somebody else to help me write, like look at the content that's on my site and frame it to match what our goals are now. And storytelling is obviously a really big part of that. As we work with different companies and build their brands, the branding exercises that we do are a lot like what Rod had showed. We don't have a framework to follow per se, but we ask a lot of those same questions. And then for our visual perspective, we try to create a representation of that. So I think what you're doing is really great. I definitely recognize that there's a need for it. That's for sure. Has anybody ever had any experience working with somebody like that, or Jennifer? Nobody else? Yeah, we do have plenty of time, so I would love for people to feel open and talk. But with each of your businesses, do you feel like you have a brand story? Do you feel that, well, that's not really fair. You have to, because that's kind of, well, like I said, I guess that's not true, because as a cobbler without shoes, like it's often that we don't work on our own businesses. So even though you're a writer that helps people figure out theirs, that's great to see your hand go up that you have one for yourself. I remember, if you do want to go back to that slide, that was kind of helpful to walk through. Maybe we could talk
This
about
one
that a
here?
little bit. The next one.
The next one, okay.
Yeah, like the personal purpose of each founder. That's the first box, and that's probably the one that I'm still stuck in. After working with coaches for years, finding your purpose that's such a big, daunting task. You're almost afraid to write it down because then it feels limiting, or you don't want to say it because it feels too big, right? I mean, that's something that you really need to work on it. So as part of your process, I see that it's the first step in the formula. Is that something that you work with people on, coach people on that step?
Absolutely. And the first book that I wrote was Are You Ready to Start a Business? And during that, personally, back in 2012, I went through some experiences and I found my purpose in life. And it's, I thrive when I look at someone smile and know that I contributed to it. And so I believe that is the cornerstone of any business, because the cornerstone of a business is the founder and is the owner. And the cornerstone of that owner is what brings them true joy in life. So what I look at is, if you don't know what brings you true joy, then how do you know your business is going to bring you true joy, and how are you going to make it through the hard times? So I created a 3-hour process, 2 to 3 hour process, where it's worked 100% of the time so far, where I help people create a single sentence statement of what brings them true joy for their entire life. Not just the business, not just their family life or personal life, whatever. But so it's a single sentence statement, and it's not just momentary happiness, but what brings them joy over time. And so I do this process periodically with my clients and with others, to where I can help them generate that single sentence. Then that acts as your anchor point. Now, when your personal purpose intersects with a big idea, that's where passion comes from. So if you're trying to figure out, where did your passion come from, or how do you keep that fire lit? Well, when you understand your personal purpose and your big idea matches that personal purpose, now you have, 2 points to where you can create a direct correlation. And now you'll be able to pay your employees instead of your mortgage. You'll be motivated because you know you can keep moving. It's really what keeps people passionate. It keeps people on a joyful track. It's not to say that life isn't hard. Of course, life is hard, but it's a way that we can find our path back to joy. And I'll tell you, the entrepreneurial journey is so difficult for, at times, that we've got to figure out how to have that happiness and how that joy stick around a lot more often. Was there a question? Somebody had
Yeah, you've got me thinking. I'm thinking about your whole presentation and how what you just said feels more powerful to me than most of what you said leading up to this point. For me personally, what you just explained, how you just explained it, summarizes what it is that you do and how important it is so much better for me. I got it a lot more in that. That was a powerful statement you just made.
Well,
I don't know
thank
if
you.
anybody else agrees, but I know you've done this a lot. I know it took us a long time to get you on our schedule because, like I said to you earlier, we try to do in-person presentations over virtual,
Right.
just for the energy that's in the room. Ironically, you're our second in a row virtual, and the last guy was in Ocala, so you guys are like neighbors. Um, something about that area. Um, and then on the other hand, we've had people drive up from Jacksonville to present too. So it's funny. Some people, I get it. Virtual is much easier, much cheaper. That's for sure.
Well, it's a
Um,
6 hour drive for me instead of like a 3 hour from Jacksonville. I've
oh yeah,
I've
yeah,
presented, in St. Petersburg, Tampa, Ocala, Daytona, and here in Orlando. So, and also out in
yeah.
Provo. So I'll actually be in Provo
I'm
at the end of the month. So,
I have a startup that I presented at 1 Million Cups as well. And I took full advantage of COVID and virtual. So I got to present on the other coasts, everywhere in between. And I didn't have to leave the comforts of my office in most cases, not home, but still it's really nice. So I definitely give you credit for that. But I just, my advice, my opinion, whatever you want to call it, is I found for myself, even presenting virtual so many times, that the presentation just became a presentation. I became detached from it and just sort of shared the slides. I put a lot of effort into writing them, and I knew that what was in there was really good. But I think hearing myself talk now, that company of mine is my perfect client in my my other business, my main business. The dream client, or the dream client's escape from pain. Like I need to convince, this isn't me pitching my other business, but I just am framing it in that I have got to figure out a way to storyline the pain that my clients feel so that I can get them to understand why it's so important to adopt what I've built. Right. And I have not put the time into that. So we have a date coming up in July where we're going to be filming a whole bunch of videos, and they're going to go out on social, and it's going to be really fun and funny, and it'll capture a lot of attention and hopefully get a lot of likes and downloads, and that's all great. And I'm not saying we go back to the drawing board, Casey. We did a great job. But I think we need to also we need to storyboard. We need a story formula. So Rod, maybe we'll be talking. I don't know. But
well,
it's got me thinking.
the whole key to finding those pains is to really get in. My exercise when I was doing it before AI stepped in and helped me, I would ask about 60 different questions and find resources to figure out what all that information was about my dream client. One of the things, I don't know if you guys have ever heard of Chet Holmes. He wrote a book called The Ultimate Sales Machine. And he took, Warren Buffett's business partner is Charlie Munger. And Chet Holmes took 9 different divisions and doubled to triple sales in each of those 9 different divisions over year. He spent quite a bit of time there. So someone that does it once, you get lucky. Someone that does it twice, you're good. Someone that does it 9 times, you're an expert, right? So what he did is, and this is where I got the word core story from, was from Chet Holmes. He passed away about 10 years ago. And he worked with, his clients, he charged about $100,000 for his services. So what I've done is I've taken this with my experience of storytelling and turned it into helping the business tell their story. But 2 things that he said that kind of shifted everything that I do. The first one was that only 3% of your ideal clients are ready to buy right now. And so that's the low-hanging fruit. Another 7% are ready to buy, or are thinking about buying. 30% would be interested if it came across, but they're not looking for it. Another 30% are ambivalent. They don't really care, any which one way or another. And then another 30% will never buy from you. And he's found this through a lot of experience. So the question is, how do you first find the low-hanging fruit, and second, find that other 7% that are looking, but that are not, that are active, but not actively looking and not ready to necessarily buy yet. And so what he did is he created a core story. And that core story for people, imagine this. He called it a stadium pitch. You got 50,000 people in a stadium, and they had to stay in their seats for 10 seconds. They couldn't get up. And 10 seconds is not very long, right? Now, imagine that after 10 seconds, they could get up and walk out on you. How are you going to keep them in their seats to listen to your whole presentation? Okay, that is what your core story is. And I have a different presentation for my core story than obviously A Million Cups, because this is not a core story presentation. This is more about my business, but think about how you would keep them in their seats. It's not about you. People don't care about you. People don't care about your business at all. That's why understanding your client, I call it a dream client. Okay, I actually got that after Chet Holmes. He calls it his Dream 100 is one of his best buyer strategies. But your dream client is the person that you want to work with and that needs what you have. If you do not understand them intensely, then you're going to have a really hard time finding them and attracting them to you. Another person that I've got a lot from is Dan Kennedy. You guys may have heard of him. He wrote the No BS Guide to Business, Marketing, all kinds of things. And he was the original copywriter for Guthy-Rinker on their infomercials. And so he is incredibly experienced, and he calls it magnetic marketing. So when you are using magnetic marketing, you are putting out content where that people, you're going to attract the people that are your ideal clients. So now with AI, I go through about 23 steps on figuring out a dream client, and I get a better response in 20 minutes with ChatGPT doing the research than I used to get in 3 weeks with my clients doing the research. And so it's a great launching point. Is it 100% accurate? No, but when I ask the right questions, I get great answers. And so I've been a question asker for decades, and so that has translated really well over into AI. But your dream client, understanding what their real pains are. And then one other thing, how many people here remember Payless Shoe Source, right? Yeah. They're bankrupt now, right? What did they sell? They sold shoes, right? Cheap shoes. You could buy shoes for $3 to about $50. And they sold shoes, and they sold them as a commodity. They sold them because of price, and they ended up going bankrupt. Now, how many here has ever heard of Nordstrom's, right? So Nordstrom started off as a shoe store. But when you walk into Nordstrom, you don't feel like you're walking into a shoe store. Nordstrom caters to women. They cater to more of a luxury class. And their shoes are typically anywhere from $80 to a couple thousand for a pair of shoes. Do they sell shoes? That's not what they sell. They sell beauty and confidence to women. And so the business that Nordstrom is in is entirely different than the business that Payless Shoe Source was in. Even though they both sold shoes, Nordstrom was not in the shoe business. They were in the beauty business and the confidence business, and to making that woman feel like $1 million. And when they walked out of there, they happily spent $500 on shoes. And at Payless, you go out there grumbling, saying that was $12 instead of $11, right? So it's a whole different experience. So the challenge that you have, and that we figure out when I take my clients through this, is what business are you really in? What business are you there for your clients? And how are you helping them transform their lives? The benefits of the benefits, we all talk about features and benefits, but the benefits of the benefits is the transformations. And you need to be selling 90% transformation and 10% product. Just a couple more things there.
Does anybody else have any questions, comments, please?
Yeah, I think this is like a curveball. A lot of products don't actually create the product themselves in the product.
I could not hear that. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'll repeat it. So Nick is, he runs a nonprofit. So his
Awesome.
question is directed towards nonprofits, right? So typically they're not selling a product. So how do you typically, do you work with nonprofits and how would you apply this to that?
Absolutely, I do. A nonprofit is selling a product. The product is the nonprofit. And you're actually selling a transformation, and that transformation is what that nonprofit is doing. And so any nonprofit is, you have to treat it just like a business. You're selling 90% transformation, 10% is the nonprofit itself, and then 90% is the transformation that you make. And when you do grant writing, when you do get sponsors, get donors, you're helping them see the transformation that they can make through your nonprofit. So your product isn't a widget. Your product is a feeling or a service, but in reality, you're still selling the transformation. So when you develop your core story around that transformation, around your business and around that transformation, that's where the powerful nonprofits actually live, is in the transformation side. And whether it's a soup kitchen or whether it's a cancer society or community, anything in between, the transformation is still what you have to sell. And you have to figure out what the pain is of the donors, their escape from pain. So when a donor is looking at it, what is so severe to them that they're going to want to help you? And so your ideal client is the donor instead of someone buying an actual physical product. And so you write this with your ideal client being the donor or being the grant writer. And by the way, your identity for your company will not really change unless your ideal client changes. And so, your business, the reason you're in business and your success, your intrinsic definition of success will stay the same. But when you go in, say you're even hunting for a job, your ideal client is that hiring manager. This is adaptable to any situation. And that's why the formula works so well. But for a nonprofit, the transformation that you're selling for the donor is how I would approach it, and how I have approached it with other nonprofits. I don't know if that answers your question there.
That was a really good, I never heard like a one word answer that really captured who I am and thought about it. That to me is I've asked this question. That was helpful.
Short answer is yes, that was very helpful. Yeah. Anybody else have any comments? Jason Gainey?
Yeah, let's see if I can get this. So if you have a business where you're serving multiple clients, would you recommend adjusting your story depending on the client? Like say you have a $1.3 million client that doesn't really fit in with the current story that you have. Would you recommend ever adjusting your story to, the business is about sales as well, but of course you want them to meet your standards or whatnot.
So the question is, would you advise having?
I actually heard the question. I actually heard that one. So everybody thinks that you need one dream client. Well, for your overall business, you have a general idea of who that client is. But if all of a sudden you have if Gary Vaynerchuk has 60 different avatars that he sells to, and he niches down super hard on any given segment that he can work with. So yes, this is one of the powerful things about AI, is that I can go in and take my company or any company, put it into AI and understand that dream client really well right off the top. And so understanding how to ask those right questions to AI, because your clients may sound similar, but say you're dealing with the big difference in these clients, maybe an age range. So instead of a 40 to a 45-year-old woman, you're looking at a 30 to 35-year-old woman, or something of that nature. There's different ways that you target a 10-year younger woman. So the whole key is being able to adapt, and that's why I love the formula that I created, because it works and adapts quickly and well. And you couple that with AI, and it's really powerful. So in other words, as many avatars as you need.
Okay, Jennifer?
Hey, I just had a quick question. I'm a copywriter that also helps companies and causes discover their story. And I take people through questions, probably like you have, and a series of exercises to arrive at their why. My
Right.
question to you is, why did you choose to take that process and put it through AI? I think it's brilliant. I think it's a great idea. I just wondered if your goal for doing that was to develop higher quality stories for them, or to serve a higher quantity of clients, which I'm guessing you could faster.
It's interesting because in February, right when GPT came out, right? Or it came out a little bit earlier, but that's when I still really started working with it. I worked with an agency and I trained an agency. There were 3 people in the agency and I trained them. And as we were going through this, I was experimenting, figuring this out with AI. And we literally came up with such great answers just chatting with ChatGPT during our sessions that they said that this was going to save them hundreds of hours with their clients. The personal purpose can't be done with AI. That's a very individual, it's different. There's 8 billion people, there's 8 billion different purposes in life. But everything else can be formulated. And what I found is that with my clients, if I follow the formula, and I know, because I know this formula works, I've done it thousands of times, then I can get down to their customization and how it matters to them much quicker, because instead of just asking some questions and trying to put it together on my own, the AI has just simplified that process. And so, because I can say, okay, give me a story. Okay, we'll do that in 25 words. We'll do that in 10 words. Give me 6-word stories. Ernest Hemingway said, any story can be told in 6 words. And he gave an example: for sale, baby shoes never worn. That's a tearjerker. And that's been made into movies, right? But the whole point is, whether it's a 6-word story, your mission statement. For example, if you take the escape from pain, your big idea, the promised land, and your business purpose and combine them, that's a mission statement. Your vision statement is your business purpose and your definition of success. The definition of success is fulfilling your business purpose. When you do that on a daily, weekly, monthly, yearly, every 100-year basis, what does that look like for you? Here's your vision statement. Your elevator pitch is your escape from pain, your big idea, and your promised land combined. You get a 10-second elevator pitch. Forget this 30-second stuff. You get a 10-second elevator pitch. A screen, you have 1.7 seconds to get somebody's attention on a screen, on their phone. They scroll 300 feet a day. How are you going to stand out? When you're sitting there in a meeting, so after you guys, when you walked in, and if you're new, you get about 7 to 10 seconds before someone's attention span is gone, talking to them. So you've got to have a 7 to 10 second elevator pitch. Well, here's the formula for you to create it. And then you use AI to refine it. And then you use your intelligence to say, AI screwed up, AI got it right, or whatever the case may be. So as a writer, I've written 3 books. I've generated hundreds of thousands of words and story content over the years. This has simplified my process, something fierce. So I don't know if that answers your question exactly. I hope it does.
Yeah, it sounds like some of both. I mean, definitely it gives you the opportunity to serve many more people because of the shorter time span, but it also sounds like you're finding that it is giving you higher quality results for them as well. That's
Exactly.
awesome. That's good.
Yeah, I would actually mirror that statement for us as well. I feel like ChatGPT has helped accelerate and improve what we were able to do before. So I don't know to quantify it if we're 4 times more efficient, but it helps us move through menial tasks as quickly as possible. I mean, even writing an out of office reply while I was on vacation, it was way funnier than I am because I prompted it to be, right? But it all comes down to the operator. So I'm really glad to hear that you've adopted it and that you understand the power and responsibility that you have as the operator of ChatGPT to help you enhance your work and make you move faster.
So one of the things that I do is when I write the strategic narrative, if it's a sales pitch, a pitch deck, whatever it is, I'll experiment with it in the style of different authors, like Tony Robbins or Oprah Winfrey or Bill Burr, the comedian, right? I mean, it writes some really funny stuff if you tell it to write in the style of other people. And so there's a lot of ways that you can be creative. Write like a fifth grader or a third grader. Gary Halbert, one of the best copywriters of all time, his goal was to write as a third or a fourth grader, right? Because when you write as when you write complex, people don't feel it. One of the things that I've learned a long time ago was you write for clarity and understanding, you don't write for complexity. And so you write in a conversational tone. And that's one of the things that this story formula can do. And then if you prompt the AI properly, it can be very conversational. And that's when people, they don't think about the words, they feel the words. Everything is based on emotion. Our brain can process 11 million bits a second. Only 40 bits a second can be processed in our conscious mind. So everything is done in our subconscious. By properly telling the story, you get into their subconscious mind. That's where they make 95% plus of decisions. And if I can tell someone, so instead of telling a story like, I heard a loud noise, walked through a hole in the wall, looked up and got wet, I say, I heard a huge thunderclap, and I got so excited because I moved to Florida just 2 years ago, and I love thunderstorms. I lived in Utah in the freaking desert for way too long, grew up in Oregon, and now I run outside, look up, get soaked, and I just love it. The first story, you had no idea. You were trying to figure out in your mind the context. The second one, you heard the thunderclap. You ran through the front door. You looked up, you got wet. You were actually out in Utah in the desert. You knew what the desert was like. I led you down a path, and that's how you can really have powerful impact with storytelling.
That's great. We are also at 10 o'clock. So I want to thank you for joining us. I want to apologize for taking so long to get you on our schedule, but I am glad that it worked out. And for all of you that are here, I hope you got something from today's presentation. His slide is still up on the screen if you want to scan it for his information. Otherwise, remember, this is being broadcast on Facebook Live. So once I click end, it will be memorialized there forever or until Facebook decides otherwise. So with that, Rod, we're signing off. Thank you very much.
Hey, thank you very much. I really appreciate your time and letting me present to you. It's something I love to do, and hopefully sometime I'll get up to Georgia and come up and see you guys from down here in Orlando.
Let us know.
Awesome.
All right. Take care, Rod.
Okay, thank you so much.